Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to my shop. I'm Dave Plummer, a retired operating systems developer from Microsoft going back to the MS-DOS and Windows 95 days. Recently, on the ShopTalk podcast, we were discussing why Windows still uses drive letters. Now, there were a number of aspects that I couldn't address at the time, like hard links and soft links and mount points and junction points and so on. So I thought I'd do a more in-depth exploration of the topic, explaining each one of them. But let's start with the basics, like why did your hard drive start with C:? What happened to A: and B:? And more importantly, why are we still using drive letters in 2025? Well, you see, most operating systems don't do this. On Linux or Mac OS, your files live in a big hierarchical tree. Everything starts at the root with slashes instead of colons. Home/Dave/desktop makes perfect sense in the Unix world. But on Windows, you've always got a drive letter, and that big old C: is doing a lot more heavy lifting than you might think. So where did drive letters come from? Well, we've got to go all the way back to CP/M, the control program for microcomputers, which was one of the earliest operating systems for personal computers. CP/M used drive letters to represent floppy disks, and when MS-DOS came along in the early 80s, it borrowed a lot of CP/M's design and standards, including, you guessed it, the whole drive letter concept. Back in those days, A was the first floppy drive and B was the second. And then when hard drives started showing up, we needed a new designation, so C: became the default for the first hard disk. That was fine when you had one or two drives, but as systems evolved, things started to get messy. And then fast forward a few decades. Microsoft tried to clean this up with NTFS mount points, and that's where you can mount a drive into a folder path instead of assigning it a letter. It's a more flexible system, and it's more in line with how Unix-like systems work. But guess what? Most people have never heard of NTFS mount points, until today. And the reason mostly is compatibility. A massive amount of Windows software assumes the presence of drive letters. Some apps hard-code C: paths. Installers often look for D: when they can't find C:. Network shares get mapped to Z:. And heaven help you if your machine boots from anything but C:. Some things start to break, and they break in subtle, frustrating ways. So why doesn't Microsoft just rip off the Band-Aid and switch to a unified file system like Linux? Well, put simply, it's legacy. And that word explains a lot of decisions in Windows. Compatibility is king. Microsoft is supporting decades of software, drivers, backup systems, deployment tools, all of which still expect drive letters. Changing that would mean breaking a huge swath of the ecosystem. But if you dig into Windows, you'll find that it can work without drive letters. You can mount volumes directly into empty folders or even reference them by their GUID-based volume path. It's just not something that most users ever see. And that's probably by design. The UI still shows the friendly A through Z because, well, most people expect it. So, given that's why drive letters have refused to die, it doesn't mean that you have to be dependent on them these days because Windows supports a wide range of alternatives like, as I said, mount points, junction points, soft links, and hard links. So let's start where it all begins, the humble hard link. Back in the early days of Unix, long before Windows was more than just a gleam in Bill's eye, the file system had to be efficient. Space was tight, resources were expensive. So when you had a file, that file was stored on disk, and your directory just kept a reference to it. Think of it like this. If the file is a book in a library, and your directory entry is the card in the card catalog that tells you where to find it. You do remember card catalogs, right? Now imagine you want that same book listed in two different categories, maybe science fiction and space opera. You don't photocopy the book and shelve a second copy. You just put another card in the catalog pointing to the same book. And that's what a hard link does. It's just a second name for the same file. Literally the same content, the same storage blocks, the same inode on Linux, just a different name. In Windows, hard links are available through NTFS and let you create what looks like another file, but really isn't. If you open or edit either copy, you're changing the same thing. And get this, even if you delete the original file, and I'm putting air quotes around original here because they're equivalent, the other link still works because the file data doesn't go away until every reference to it is gone. Now there are some rules. Hard links can only be made between files and not folders. And they have to live on the same volume, so no linking from your C drive to your D drive. But within those constraints, they're extremely handy. Software installers sometimes use them to save space by linking multiple paths to the same data. It's not magic, but it's close. Let's take a look at creating a hard link. Let's assume we have a folder called C:temp where we're going to do our work, and in that folder we have a file called file1. We can create a hard link to it anywhere on the volume, but it has to be somewhere on the same volume. For simplicity, I'll just do it in the same folder. The command to create a hard link called file2 that points to the same file contents is mklink /h file2 file1. The H parameter indicates a hard link, and we're creating a hard link from file 2 to the file 1 data. But if hard links are kind of an alias that shares the same body, then soft links are more like name tags. Symbolic links are a little more like those Windows shortcuts that you've seen all of your life, except better, because they're not just cosmetic. When you create a symlink, you're creating a file that says, hey, I'm not the thing you're looking for, but the thing you're looking for is over there. And just like a map, that pointer can get outdated. If you move or delete that original file, the symlink will break. This is one of the key differences from a hard link, which stays valid as long as any of the links remain. What makes symlinks powerful, though, is their flexibility, because you can make a symlink to a file or a folder. You can even link across volumes, even across network shares in some cases. They also integrate cleanly into most tools and command line utilities. To most software, a symlink just looks like the thing that it's pointing to. Want a real-world use case? Let's say you've got a tool that expects config data at /program data, myapp, config.json, but you want to keep that file under version control in your OneDrive folder. Well, instead of rewriting the tool, just symlink the path it expects to the path you want. It's a form of redirection without the overhead of actually copying the file. On Windows, you can create symlinks with the mklink command, and you'll need to run it with administrative privileges unless you're running on at least Windows 10 build 14.972 or later and have developer mode turned on, in which case all the shackles are off. Creating a soft link is done the same way as a hard link, except we omit the /h option. So the command to create a soft link from file 3 back to file 1 is mklink file 3 file 1. As a more interesting example, you can make a soft link from here to your System32 folder as follows. Mklink sys32 /Windows System32. But we're still talking about links that point to files and folders. What if you want to mount a whole drive somewhere else in the tree? Well, that's where mount points come in. If you've ever used Linux or Mac OS, you've seen this idea in action before. Plug in a new hard drive, and instead of getting some arbitrary drive letter like E or F, it shows up as a new folder somewhere, often under the mount path or volumes. Well, it turns out that Windows can do it too. It's just hidden behind a few more clicks. Let's say you've got a secondary SSD that you use exclusively for game installs. You could mount it as D or E:, but those letters are left over from MS-DOS where there were only 26 possibilities. If you run out, and believe me, some people do, you'll appreciate mount points. Instead of giving it a drive letter, you assign the new volume to an empty NTFS folder. So you could mount your new SSD directly under /games, and to your system, it looks like just another folder. But the data lives on the whole different physical drive. And that can be more than just cosmetic. For example, you might want to isolate I/O traffic or use a faster disk for certain operations. And with mount points, you can design a file system that looks unified to the user, but is actually distributed across many devices. It's a very Unixy idea, but it's very handy, and it's one that I wish more Windows users knew about. There's just one catch. The folder you mount it into has to be on an NTFS volume. That's because this redirection trick relies on NTFS reparse points, a mechanism in the file system that intercepts certain operations and reroutes them elsewhere. And speaking of reparse points, we now turn our attention to the strange and fascinating world of junction points. They're sort of the Frankenstein's monster of the linking family. Not quite a hard link, not quite a symlink, but somewhere in between. Junction points are a type of directory symbolic link specific to NTFS. They let you create a link from one folder to another. So you can make a folder at C:users, Dave, documents, old projects that actually redirects to D archives projects. From the user's perspective, it's seamless. The big difference between a junction and a symlink is this. A junction can't link to a remote location, like a UNC or network path, but it works without the special permissions that symlinks sometimes require. And because they're implemented with reparse points too, they're very fast and efficient. In fact, Windows itself uses junction points all over the place. If you've ever poked around in your /users folder, you've probably noticed a few directories with strange little arrows on them, like My Documents or Application Data. Well, these aren't regular folders, and they're not plain old shortcuts either. They're junction points used to maintain compatibility with older programs. And just like symlinks, if you delete the junction point's target, the junction will be invalid. But delete the junction itself, and the target is untouched. The files remain where they were. I'll put the actual syntax in the video description because frankly it's too complicated to read aloud in a video, and it requires using the UNC GUID path of the volume that you're linking to. Better you get something you can copy and paste to start with. If this all sounds a little messy, well it is, but that's the trade-off. Flexibility and power in exchange for a little complexity. And once you know how to tell the difference between each type, that power becomes more accessible. So let's break it down with a quick mental checklist. If you want multiple names for the same file on the same hard drive, then use a hard link. If you want a flexible shortcut that works across drives or folders, then use a Symlink. To mount an entire volume into a folder, that's a mount point. And to redirect one folder to another on the same machine, that's a junction point. Each has its place and each has its strengths. If you've ever struggled to reorganize files or run out of drive letters or wanted to trick an application into thinking its files are somewhere other than they really are, now you've got the tools to do it and do it right. And here's one little more secret to take with you on the road. You can combine them. You can have a junction point that links to a folder that contains a symlink that points to a file that also has a hard link elsewhere. It's turtles all the way down. But tread carefully because this is a very powerful part of the system, and like anything powerful, it can get you into trouble if misused. Just make sure you understand what each type of link really does under the hood, and you'll be well ahead of the game 99% of the time. If you found today's episode to be any combination of informative or entertaining, remember that I'm mostly in this for the subs and likes, so I'd be honored if you consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like on the video before you go today. And if you're already subscribed, thank you. If you learned something new, or if you've got a favorite use case for Symlinks or mount points, let me know in the comments. I always enjoy hearing how people are bending their systems to their will, and we answer the best user comments every Friday on ShopTalk. Check it out at the link in the video description. Speaking of which, check out the new merch store where you can grab a sexy new Dave's Garage mug, shirt, or hat. Let me know what you think of the store in the comments, as it's completely new and I'd like to get your feedback on it. So in the meantime and in between time, I hope to see you next time, right here in Dave's Garage.
Do it, Glenn! Do it! Do it!